Kia ora hui mai koutou. From the footsteps of my ancestral mountain, I'd like to extend my greetings to the Wurundjeri people. It's an honour to be on their land, and I acknowledge their ancestors, their elders past and present, their current leaders, and their sovereignty over their land on which we were lucky enough to be visiting. That is the view from my ancestral mountain called Ruapehu, and looking north over other people's lands, because my land is actually in behind there. And for anybody who's a Lord of the Rings fans, yes, that is Mordor that we're looking at. Right. What I want to talk to you about today is some of the stuff that's going on in New Zealand at the moment. I'm a person of very little tolerance. Fortunately, I married somebody with even less tolerance than I have. But I have spent the last 20 years trying to change the system, which is probably one of the reasons why some of the people who were a year behind me at school are now full professors, and I'm not, but I'm not bitter. But what I want to talk to you about is some, very quickly, just some of the things that we're doing to change or create permanent change in how data is used in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And in doing that, we're actually making these changes permanent, but hopefully sustainable. Added to that is where we can, we're making them public domain. So there's several activities I'm going to whip through very quickly, and then I'm going to focus on three main ones that are going to hopefully change the way we access and use data, and they might even be applicable here in Australia. First of all is a way of creating an Indigenous-informed GIS data cutter for official data. So rather than relying on official statistics, regions and boundaries, we can actually have a user-informed way of cutting data around within a GIS-informed boundary. More about that later. Secondly, there's been some processes happening at national and local government. As part of Te Mararauranga, I've been one of a few members of a working group looking at reviewing a statistical standard for tribal identification for official statistics. Now, previously, there are some tribal nations that haven't been able to get on that statistical list because of the bureaucratic processes that were put in place. So, as we heard yesterday, for some nations here in Australia, we had exactly the same situation. It was impossible to get information out of the official statistics system about specific tribal nations. Now we actually have a process where tribal nations can apply and get their name incorporated in the official statistics system, and that means that there will be census data about those people. Having census data means that we now have denominated data for all those of us epidemiologists in the room, which means we can actually start calculating rates and age standardised rates, which means we can start looking at change over time for our populations in statistically valid ways, rather than just counting numbers. The second thing is that at a local government level, there's been ways for Indigenous-informed data needs. So they've actually gone through and done a bit of a stock take about what official data is available about Indigenous peoples in a particular region, and we're talking here about the Auckland Council region, and then said, well, actually, that's the official stuff. We actually want information about this, right? And that has actually been built on a well-being matrix that has been culturally informed, and there's been all sorts of indicators about that, and then they've mapped those indicators to what's in the official data, and of course there are big gaps. And so they've then turned around to the local government agency and the national, to the local government and to the National Statistics Agency and said, fill the gaps, right? So it's actually turning that addressing the gaps dialogue right on its head, right? So instead of the gaps being the gap between outcomes and non-Indigenous outcomes, it's about the gaps in the state sector to fulfil our needs. Thirdly, the public sector in New Zealand had an internal course on official statistics and using official statistics. It's a certificate level course, so equivalent of about a stage 1 university course, very inwardly looking. Funded by, it was delivered across the Pacific to great success, funded by Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade in New Zealand, and they decided to have a review of it, and a few of us rather stroppy statisticians said, hang on, why are you delivering it overseas when the need is here, right, to our people? And they said, well, it's not designed for anybody but public servants. And we went, could it be? And they went, yeah. Okay, so let's do it. So we kind of subverted the review process, and now that that'll be going, that will be validated next year. It's a 1-year full-time equivalent course where people do a set of papers, but part of it is actually do a project applying the knowledge to a project that relates to their work. And it's a full curriculum that can be delivered anywhere, right? So we've actually taken something that was state sector and turned it around so it actually faces outside. It's not perfect yet, but it's sufficiently flexible in its curriculum that we can subvert that further. So that's 3 different things. I'm currently building a permanent Māori longitudinal study, longitudinal capability within our official statistics system, using an Indigenous nationally representative survey as a starting point. And then we're developing some data visualization tools that can be applied to official data that is publicly accessible, or maybe even not publicly accessible. And the reason we're focusing on data visualization is that this means you don't have to spend 3 years to become a statistician or 5 years to become an epidemiologist. You can actually get value out of a data using a point-and-click tool. So we're looking at changing the system permanently. So we're getting data system responsiveness changes, but also building Māori data capability by actually having some training programs coming on stream. So a little bit about this GIS project in the first instance. So at the moment, official data has evolved to inform decision making by officials, right, at either the central or local government level. And so part of that is that the boundaries of central and local government are embedded in the official statistics system. So if we're trying to get information about our people by our definitions, those boundaries don't actually meet our governance areas at all. So how do we do this? So one of the ways we can do this is to go back to the building blocks, but they don't work either, because if you look at how data is cut by territorial local authorities, so I've just been told I have to speed up, so I'm speeding up. That doesn't work, right? So if we go to the census area unit where we can usually get data, that doesn't work either. And in fact, although this is the area that most data is usually available from, entire tribal areas can disappear in that. So the mesh blocks don't work either because the data's, those mesh blocks are inconsistent across time, and they don't match tribal boundary descriptions because they follow things like motorways, which aren't really a traditional boundary. So what we are able to do, and we're working with Stats New Zealand, is to create a way of GIS forming boundaries that can then go into the official data system and create tribal boundaries. And you can see there's issues of overlap, but that's all right because we're not interested in comparing, we're interested about getting data about those tribal nations. Our role for this is actually to be advocates to make this happen, but part of it is to make sure that with the tribal governance, they aren't just defining a map, they're defining protocols and how that map can be used. And only if those protocols are agreed by the official Stats New Zealand will that map go into the official statistics system. Very quickly, we have created this point-and-click data visualization tool. This enables you to do any work with any count data and do age standardized rates by whatever standard you want, right? By whatever region you want, by whatever age group you want, by whatever outcome this data is in there. And it can actually suck up your own data and analyze that. This will sit on your own computer, right? And it prints out graphs like this with robust, very statistically robust confidence intervals around it, so you can visualize whether or not there's been a change or a difference. The reason for doing this is this takes 5 minutes to teach. right? You don't have to sit through 4 hours of me teaching you how to do age standardisation, which, if you're having trouble sleeping, is quite effective. But as a way of developing our people, not so good, right? Also, there's a freeware data analyzer coming out of our department. Our department is the home of R. This is a point-and-click version of R. It's called Insight, because it's Kiwi. It has to have the NZ in it, right? Sorry about that, people. This is free. Again, it sits on your own computer, so you're not having to upload your data to anywhere else. It has all the bells, most of the bells and whistles of R. It does all sorts of really cool stuff. But this will be GIS capable by the end of the year, and it's free. Right? This is a game changer. This is like having a free version of SPSS. Again, 2 hours to train somebody. Right? And it's got some inbuilt stuff, so it'll detect in your data whether or not it's got what type of variables it's got, and it won't let you do anything stupid, like that's a categorical variable. No, you can't display it like that. Can't do that type of analysis. Or you've got GIS variables in here. Fine. Let's go and find a map. Part of that is that has already been tested. It's had over 45,000 users as part of this free MOOC. Right? That MOOC is available free. I've used that successfully, turning Māori qualitative researchers, right, into hard-ass number geeks. Right? It's a really cool, easy to use course. So part of our role as Te Manararanga is advocates, and being advocates, one of the things that we're trying to achieve is permanent changes in the official statistics system. Kia ora koutou.